Within the anime community, there is a lack of discussion about its most formative years. The 60s were a time where big animation companies began to create the staples of what the industry would become: serialized television and anime films. While the early TV shows leave something to be desired, the films of the era are a different story. I watched every anime film I could get my hands on from the time period to give you what are the best anime of the 60s. At number 10, I'm already breaking the rules. Band of Ninjas isn't animated per se, more of a full-length storyboard. And that story is of a mystery renegade who begins helping the peasants and farmers against a fictitious regime, leading to a full-out war. The story was based on a manga, Ninja Bonicho, by Senpai Shurito, best known for his work in the Gekinap genre. For the film, Shurito collaborates with acclaimed director Nanisa Oshima to create this outlandish experiment. In 1967, there was no market for adult-focused animation on TV, especially not one about a period piece full of magical ninjas. So they got a budget together, condensed a season full of anime into a 2-hour film, and made it out of manga panels, music, and voice work. I admire the ballsiness, but it can be a detriment to the watching experience, making scenes hard to follow from a visual and narrative standpoint, especially since the whole film was in black and white. But regardless, it's such an anomaly, I can't help but respect it. It's dense, violent, and bizarre in ways rare to this decade. To believe it, you need to see it.
元亀元年7月、影丸の子宮は信長の城下へ到着した。
これか。まさに影丸の首じゃ。まさか影丸君だ。
Now for something completely different, an absurdist masterpiece of trash. The Flying Phantom Ship. This proto-Axe Cop plot where anything goes. This is a movie which is tone-deaf, flipping its direction from genre every 10 minutes, bearing in mind it's only an hour long. Though I can't put this blame all on the director. Hiroshi Akita would go on to work on one of Toei's best films from the 70s. Though this isn't his finest work. There's a lot of reused animation from other projects, and even repeating its own far too much. Although it does have some impressive cuts, and a charm of its own. It's the perfect film to get a group together with some drinks and watch the madness unfold. Bonus points if you have no idea what's going on.
私は今から10年前、なぶり殺しにされたこの屋敷の主人、いよ。毒を飲ませるだけで飽き足らず、妻や子供まで私の船に運び、火を放ち事故と見せかけて沈めたのだ。その犯人は今ものうのうと生きている。だが、私たちの恨みは幽霊船と共にこの世にとどまった。その悪人が悔い改めるまでは消え去ることはないだろう。勇敢な少年だな君は。どうやら邪魔が入ったようだ。では また会うこともあるだろう。
Bending the rules once more, we have Astro Boy the movie, an anthology of several of the best episodes from the show, with a couple pieces of new animation, now in colour. Well, sometimes. The stilted animation hasn't aged well, but the stories told are still enjoyable, with a level of sincerity bleeding into its high sci-fi concepts. It's a good introduction to the series and why it's so beloved, reminding me of a Japanese version of the Fleischer Superman. With much worse animation, but still, iconic.
たちまち1週間が過ぎた。あとがまだベムを連れてこない。地球最後の日まであと7日間じゃ。
やっておいで。ねえ、気持ちいいだろう。ほんと食べ、ほら。飼い主って白状だね。いざとなったら犬や猫をぽり出して逃げちまうんだから。かわいそうじゃないか。ねえ。おばあさんは逃げないんですか？娘が一緒にいてくれるからね。さあさあ、入ってお茶でも飲んでかない坊や。はあ？もう何してんだね。こっちをかけなさい。お茶入れてちょうだいね。はい。優しい娘でね、今お茶を入れてくるからね。ばあさん、お宅に冷蔵庫ありませんか？冷蔵庫ならほれ、そこに。空っぽですわ、それ。ね。ベムって何？失礼しました。僕、ロボットなので本当はお茶いただけないんです。さよなら。
Number 7. The third film released by Toei Animation, whilst they were still trying to compete with Disney, and it might have even gave Disney a run for its money. Well, if we ever got a high-definition version of it, that is. The only version we ever got in the West was a butchered release, adding an American narration and changing all the names of the characters.
Naturally, Alakazam was pleased and excited about this great honor, and he sang as though he didn't have a care in the world.
But this is not that version. This is Sayuki, an adaptation of an adaptation in a collaboration with its creator, Tezuka, who helped bring this manga to life. And I've always had a soft spot for the Monkey King narrative, so seeing a big family film animating its iconic scenes was cathartic. And this narrative does lend itself more so to animation than other forms. When it's not, it gets unintentionally silly.
Pressable.
I love to fight!
And I'd be hard-pressed to say this isn't the version that inspired Toriyama's own reinterpretation of the narrative. Toei did animate all his mangas after all. Seems more than just a coincidence. The highlight of Sayuki is Yasuji Mori's fluent and graceful movements that he brings to all the animal characters, with plenty of Mori's asphyxiation with crying animals to boot. It's Bambi meets the hero's journey, and dancing monkeys. What more could you want?
俺より頭のいいやつがいてたまるもんか。
嘘じゃないわ、本当よ。人間って私たちよりずーっと利口なのよ。
笑わせるな。
The first original Mushi Productions film have been known mainly for their adapting of Tezuka's mangas. But when it came to filmmaking, they wanted to be the alternative to Toei's more family-friendly output, the Warner Brothers to your Disney. So enter Tales of the Street Corner, which starts off as a light-hearted film around mice, teddy bears and living musical posters. Roll with it. Then becomes a bold statement about the rise of communism in the 60s. The animation garnered acclaim at its release, winning a Noburu Effigy Award. And you can see why. The whole film is like this children's book bursting into life, with its flat colour aesthetic, aging a lot better than most on this list. Its lyrical and charming musical score accentuates its visual narrative. Although the ending can be a bit blunt for how whimsical most of the film is, it still needs to be seen. Just watch it. It's like 40 minutes long. Just watch it. Another Toei production, and the only one that ever got multiple sequels, the film that gave Toei its logo, The Wonderful World of Puss in Boots. After the production problems of their last film, you get the impression the animators were allowed to run wild on a creative vacation in this film. The animation direction is much more consistent than the prior film, with everything on model, creative uses of movement, and playful humour that gives the film this wild Looney Tunes style. And that's not mentioning the backgrounds, which are really beautiful, reminiscent of a proto-Studio Ghibli, appropriate since a chunk of the team would later go on to form that company. Its lead character Pero is charismatic and pulls you through the premise, which is more or less Disney's Aladdin, with Puss in Boots filling in the genie's role, if not quite as able. While the songs added feel tacked on and weird, outside the opening, which is damn catchy, the film is a light-hearted adventure with a great finale that was later used to inspire the basis for Castle of Cagliostro. Check it out. I can dig it.
あれまたペロカゴ待てよ、ここで暴れるのはよせよ。いいぞ。あれよし、行くぞ。来るか。これあらあ
Now we get onto the first epic of Toei. Mori's designs bring what could be the most stylish of the 60s animated films, which hasn't aged a day in 40 years, a style that would later inspire Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, and was used to retell some of the most famous Shinto myths, weaving them into a grand narrative about the consequences of emotional trauma or coming to terms with the death of a loved one. The narrative can become tangential at times, while trying to tie these myths together, and might lean on its animal cast a little too much. But regardless, Little Prince has some of the most jaw-dropping animated sequences in this decade. It's a classic that needs a re-release in the West. Pictures at an exhibition, Mushi Productions own Fantasia, a variety of different animation styles with orchestra accompaniment and a slice of political edge. It's the most consistent animated film the production company ever made, with a sharp pace and great visuals that are easier to show and talk about. Check it. Just look at it. Just look at it. Now for the most ambitious and experimental film on the list. Not one I can recommend to everyone, but it was the film that made me interested in older anime to begin with, being the first X-rated anime film ever released, as well as the longest animated film in this period, even if it takes leaps with its source material, Arabian Nights. The heart of the film is surprisingly close to its actual original intent, especially when it comes to eroticism. The appeal of 1001 Nights is just how unique and strange it is, being both an adaptation, a product of its 60s culture, and whatever else the creative team wanted to throw in. It has this wild, psychedelic fuzz soundtrack, and this Odyssey-level narrative, which is longer than it needs to be, but that's part of the wild, unpredictable ride it is. Tezuka, the god of manga himself, spearheaded this project, even doing some of the animation cuts from the film. And this idea that animation could be appreciated by a wider audience than just children might not have catched on at the film's release, but today with anime bigger than ever, it was sure ahead of the curve. You know what I'm trying to say. You know. There's a lot to unpack when it comes to 1001 Nights, so much so I plan to make 3 videos on it and its sequels. But if you give it a chance, you're not going to find anything else like it, from its beautiful art design, mixed media animation, and radical style. It's in a league of its own. Alright, before we move on to the number 1 spot, I want to do a couple of honourable mentions in the independent animation world, starting with Murder, a funny little short made as a parody of genre films of the time. It's short and witty and to the point. I'll put a link in the description. And the films of Yoji Kuri. Yuji had a distinct sense of humour which resonated with the Western counterculture of the time. It's weird and surreal, but never too serious. In fact, if I could have got my hands on his film Achi Kochi, it might have even ended up on this list. Speaking of which, finally, number 1, the starting point of modern anime movies, the first unofficial Ghibli film, where we start to see the studio heads forming their style. The most aspiring Toei film of this period, that almost never got made, Hole's Prince of the Sun. While directed by Alzal Takahata to an impressive degree for a first-timer, you can see the hand of his collaborator Hayao Miyazaki, setting the groundwork of both the style and themes that he would be tackling for the rest of his career. It's a must-see to those new to anime, and those wanting to know more about its history, with scenes like the pike fight still going down as some of the most iconic from the medium, 50 years later. Blah 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 blah. I have gushed enough about the film in other places, which I will link at the end. Just trust me on this one. Go watch it. And that's a list, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, maybe you want to subscribe for more stuff. I've got a whole month full of videos planned. Also, if you want to know more about, a couple of films on this list, I did make a couple of videos about them in the past, which I'm going to link right here. So, you want to press a button, you press it right here. You click that button, there's more content, and you can just keep going, keep clicking. And you'll probably run out pretty quickly because I need to make more content. But all the same, it's there. So, yeah, pretty cool. I'm done. There's nothing more to say, so I'll see you next time.